from TeachIllinois.com, this is The Teacher's Classroom, the podcast that explores current issues and topics in education and how they relate to teaching and students. Here is your host, Matt Weld.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Teacher's Classroom. Today, we are going to be talking with Joe Sanfelippo. He is a superintendent in Falls Creek, Wisconsin. He is an expert in, leadership and social media and storytelling and branding and all things good about what happens in our schools today. The conversation started out talking about storytelling and branding, but it ended up talking about social media and how we need to be intentional with all that. He gives some great tips. So without further ado,
hi, my name is Joe Sanfelippo. I'm the superintendent in the Fall Creek School District, home of the Fall Creek Crickets.
And that kind of energy is exactly why you're on the podcast today.
You got to know, people got to know where you come from, man. I'm telling you, this is the greatest place in the world. And it's just great to be part of Fall Creek and everything that Go Crickets has to get out there. But really excited to talk about what we're doing here on your podcast today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, You are a big proponent of school branding, which I am just getting into, and I think that there's a huge need for this. And I look around on schools' websites and Twitter feeds, and I see a lack of branding and storytelling. I think it all started when you're going to go talk somewhere, and so you need to find somebody at a school or where their address is, and so you go to their webpage and there's nothing,
right?
Or it's really hard to find. So, can you just give me a little idea about your idea of branding and so what it looks like? We know what it is for like Nike and those big names, but what is it for schools?
Yes, I don't know if it changes much in terms of the in terms of like the entry point, meaning that Jeff Bezos says like your brand is what people say about you when you're not there, and we feel the same way about it here. So we want to be in conversations with people in our community and outside of our community, because when we're in those conversations, even if we're not there and we're being talked about, we want to make sure that it's an accurate representation of who we are as an organization. And when we do that, then we find ourselves having different conversations, publicly about it, because we're really trying to promote the great work that's happening here. The issue that I have with the branding, you can say anything you want about the term. I think people get jacked up about the term branding in and of itself, and then all of a sudden it turns into a negative. We're just trying to tell great stories and have an accurate representation of what's going on, because what's really happening is that, the stories of schools are being told by people who went to school 25 years ago, and they're telling the story about what happened to them like it happened yesterday. And that's not fair to what our people are doing on a daily basis to really inspire kids. So we want to just make sure that the real stuff is out there, and everything that we're doing is like I said, an accurate representation of what's happening.
So when you say we are responsible for doing that, who is the we?
So one of the things that you'll always hear out of us is it's always we. That's actually one of our board norms, our school board norms. We have 3 school board rules. That's it. There's only 3. Every school board member knows about it, and everyone, if you ask any of them, they'll tell you all 3. One of them is that we always keep our dirty laundry in house. The second is the answer is always we. And the third is we never give up the opportunity to say something great about our school. So our school board operates on 3 norms. That's it. We can talk about everything else underneath it, but when it comes down to the work that we do here, it's always about we. So, when I say that, we do this or we do that, that's a collective group of people. And, from the storytelling in classrooms to the promotion of the work that we do through athletics to the live stream of all the things that we do through our Cricket TV, it's always, we're all in this thing together.
Well, I think that's very powerful, and I think it's kind of like when teachers set rules for their classrooms, the fewer the better, the less specific the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah,
and collective. I think that's the thing, is it's collective. Like those 3 norms aren't Joe's norms; they're norms that we came up with as a group. So the board knows and lives those on a daily basis.
Yeah, good. In your book that's called The Power of Branding, Telling Your School's Story, and you wrote it with Tony
Sinanis, yeah.
Snanis. Okay.
Snanis, yeah, great guy, great assistant superintendent now in New York. He's an amazing educator and really talks a lot about the work that he does in every place that he goes.
You talked about your school identity and what that means. Is that any different from branding?
Yeah, I don't know if it's different. I think it's just an expansion of what you have to have an identity of like who you are. And when it comes down to the message that you're trying to get out there and the identity that you have as a district, you just need to make sure that there's three components to what that identity is. The first thing that it has to be simple. And when it's simple, then other people, can talk about it. The second thing is it has to be repeatable. So simple, repeatable, and the last thing and the most important component, honestly, of the three is that it's unique. So if it's simple, unique, and repeatable, now you've got something that everybody can talk about. And so, like, if we say we're a community that works, learns, and succeeds together, if everybody knows that we're a community that works, learns, and succeeds together, everybody can talk about the fact that we're a community that works, learns, and succeeds together. And it doesn't matter if you're a 5-year-old in kindergarten or if you're an 85-year-old at a football game. If you know what that identity is, you can talk about it. And then we do that by making sure that it's part of our brand conversation. Like, if we go to a game, we'll give away T-shirts and ask people to tell us, what the vision of Fall Creek schools are. If they say it's a community that works, learns, and succeeds together, they're going to get a T-shirt. Well, guess what they're doing? They're talking at home about what that really looks like. And you put that on your social media feed, and now you know that kids at home are talking to their parents about what the vision of their school is. And then it's just different because now we're all in, having a conversation together.
And so something like a community that works, learns, and succeeds together is that unique?
Yeah, I think that. Well, I think what makes it unique is that we add Go Crickets to the end. I mean, I think that's
gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, so you got to have some uniqueness too. For us, it's like because we have a unique mascot, it really helps that process. We just put Go Crickets on everything. I mean, if we're talking about like the day-to-day living of what that identity is, and then there's also expanding that to the conversation in terms of the brand promise. I think that's an important component of what we do too. Like we have Go Crickets it's on everything. Like you walk through the building, you see it everywhere. You see it on gear. You see it, it's like it's everywhere. And we give stuff away so people are part of that brand. Like you just want to be. You want to be part of it. And the best part for us is like if I go to a place and I give a bunch of stuff away and then our teachers go to that place like a year later and they recognize our teachers because they have Go Cricket stuff on. And that's awesome.
Well, I think you traveling around also helps spread that message.
Yeah, I would hope so. I think that's part of it. When I got hired in Fall Creek, the one of the board members, I asked what the expectation of me was as the new superintendent. And they said, one of the board members said, we have a lot of really good things going on around here and nobody knows about them. And I'm like, well, I might not be the best superintendent you're going to hire, but I'll tell you, I'm the loudest person you'll ever meet. So you give me that platform and we'll go get it. And I don't think there's a board member or a community member at this point that doesn't believe that our stuff is all over the place. I mean, heck, we got Go Cricket gear in every state in America and 5 countries. We have pictures of all these things. They're coming from all over the place. And it helps you celebrate stuff because when you do that, when that stuff is out there, then the people inside the building know that their audience is bigger than the 20 kids in their classroom. Now the audience is the world. And when the audience is the world, they treat the conversation differently.
Right. Yeah. Like my parents always told me when they left me at home, don't do anything that you wouldn't do if we were looking. The rules are the same whether we're looking or not, type of thing. So yep. I think it's powerful if you know that people are watching you and that your products are public. Mm-hmm. It makes a bigger difference.
Oh, yeah. And it helps them celebrate it, too, because it's in that spot where it's not just the small group that gets to see their brilliance. Like our teachers are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. And the idea that they can get their work out with the great things that they're doing with their students and they're connected now to the world. And they're all, that we've got groups from all over the country asking our staff to help them with certain things, professional development, documentary stuff. We're talking about like we had a Global Sphero Day 2 years ago. All of those things, our people are getting asked to contribute to other districts across the country, and that makes the work more worth it.
Sure. Have you also noticed any other unexpected benefits of all this publicity or just spreading your story around? Like, do you get for applications, open positions, do you get more applications than you used to? Anything like that?
I think for the applications, I guess I wouldn't be able to speak to that only because we've been doing it ever since I got here. So, I mean, it has grown a little bit since I've got here in certain areas. There are certain areas when it comes to jobs that they're just hard to fill jobs. So I don't know if those have gotten any better. But in general, I think we have more applicants. The other thing we do is we have more families that are inquiring about coming into the district from outside the district because you can open enroll in Wisconsin. So, if you're 10 miles away or 15 miles away and you're not, you still want, your kids to come to school here and you're able to get them here, we find more people doing that. So our open enrollment numbers have gone up.
So that's different than Illinois then. So if you live outside of those school boundaries, as long as you provide transportation, your kids can attend Fall Creek.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So you talk about that the way to get your brand out to the public is through storytelling. We talk a lot about storytelling with students in the classroom, but what does this look like at the school/district level?
So the biggest thing is that like everybody's got a story. The question is, how do you make sure that story gets to the right places? And for us, it starts with telling student stories and empowering them, empowering the work that happens in that classroom by making sure that work is public. So we'll do like, we had some staff members that were doing podcasting with kids. So instead of, reading a book and then doing like a reflection form on the book, they were able to do a podcast, and then that podcast is out there and you can lock it down if you want, or you can open it up to the public. But the biggest thing for us is that you have that podcast available, and then that podcast not only goes to the teacher, but it has the ability to go to the parent as well. So now the parent can see this child's growth throughout the course of the year. And that's what parents want. Parents want to be invested, and they want to know that their kids are growing, but they also just want to be part of, something bigger, because their school experience might not have been all that great, or the school experience has changed a little bit, and we got to get them thinking about school a different way. Like if they were like really good spellers, when they were in school, and they put that list of 10 words on the fridge and just do, practice all those things, and it ends up being like a badge of honor for them because they were a great speller when they were in school. So now the kid has to be a great speller when they're in school. Well, we're not doing as much of that anymore because it may not be relevant to the certain area. So we want to make sure that the stuff that they are doing is public and they can take pride in that as well.
Yeah. So when you talked about some in a workshop that I was in recently of yours, you told a story about just grabbing kids and phoning parents, or what was that? Something like you go and all of a sudden you get a kid and you make a video really quick and you post it, and then, pretty soon everybody's grandparent is on Facebook.
Right. So I think one of the things that's important about the work that we do is we're very intentional about the work, because I think a lot of times when people go through their day, they just go through their day, and at the end of the day, they're like, "Whoa, my goodness, that went really fast." But then they can't really. It's like when I drive my daughter to gymnastics 4 days a week. Right. There are often times that I get to the door at gymnastics and think, "How in the heck did I get here?" Even though you're safe on the road, but you're like, you do it 4 days a week for the last 5 years. You just kind of get there, and I think that happens with us too. Is that we just kind of get there sometimes. So we want to be really intentional about that work. So here would be an example. An example would be, you go do a podcast with a student, right? You could, from that spot, because you could podcast right from your phone, you could podcast from the classroom and then just send that podcast out to the world right away. And it's fine. I mean, you get it out there right away. You get it out quickly. Or if you could be really intentional about what kind of movement you want on that podcast, and then you go back to your office and you get everything ready to go. And right before you send it, you call the parents of the kids on that podcast and say, I just want to let you know, I'm going to put something on our social media feed here in the next 15 or 20 minutes. And I just had a great conversation with your son about a tower he was building in second grade. And it was really cool to hear him talk about how engaging it was. And he was really excited about how he put it together. And I was really happy to kind of be in that space. So I'm glad that we captured that on audio. And I'm going to send that out on our social media feeds. I just thought that you'd want to know about that. And that was it. And then I just leave it there. And then, so mom and dad are sitting on the other side of the phone, refreshing their computer every 3 seconds to make sure that's right. That they can be the first one to like it and share it. Right. Cause they're just like us. So they just want recognition. And I always tell people the parents want to get their kids stuff out there because their sister's kids get all the attention in the family and they want to have something to brag about too. So the more that we can give them things to brag about, the more they're going to like the work that we do.
Yeah, so I like this idea about being intentional as well. How do you share that with your staff? Like, how do you build and make that intentionality repeatable?
Yeah,
or consistent even?
I think it's consistent in terms of once they understand the leverage that they get in being intentional, like when we first started talking about putting stuff out on social media, the vast majority of people would respond with, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time. There's just no time. There's my day is already so full. Adding one more thing onto that is not going to help. And I'm like, absolutely. I totally understand where you're coming from. And you do not have to do this at all. This is completely up to you. And then, and we kind of let that kind of just set for a little bit. And what ended up happening was you had a couple of teachers. We had a couple of teachers that were really intentional about telling their story. And what ended up happening was with those teachers, they weren't getting the parent phone calls that other teachers were getting. And when that conversation started happening, why aren't you getting these calls? I'm getting 3 calls about what's going on next week. How come you're not getting these calls? Well, the answer is relatively simple. It's that we were intentional about putting the work out there. And when you're intentional about putting the work out there, you have to answer less questions about what's going on, which therefore means you have more time.
Right. Yeah. Back when I was in the classroom, social media wasn't a terribly big thing. It was brand new. But I did a weekly email. And I tell teachers at the time that was the best thing I ever did. On Fridays, Weld's World went out and it was, an update about what we did and what was coming up. And it solved a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah.
Or prevented a lot of problems, I guess.
Both. I think both.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the superintendent, you have a really small district, right?
Yeah, 850 kids, K-12.
And you're in one building, or is it
one building?
One building.
One building.
So, as the lead learner for your district / building / everything, what is your procedure? Do you have when we're talking about intentionality and we're talking about branding and storytelling? Do you have a schedule that you try to follow? I know some principals have a walk around Wednesday or things like that. Do you have something similar?
I think so. I mean, I guess I have to think about it. I'm intentional about making sure that I walk the space at least twice a day. And when I walk the space, I make sure that I'm making, at least 2 connections to put, out to the world or to have a conversation with another connection. So what that would mean is you walk through and either you take a picture and tweet it, or you take a picture or have a conversation and then go back and then call the parent of that kid or the teacher of that kid or the spouse of the teacher who's doing really great things. Any kind of connection really. So I do that twice a day. The board has set a goal of 7 to 10 non-athletic positive posts per week on our social media channels, and we try to adhere to that. Up until last until October. So for 9 years, I was solely responsible for our social media feeds, solely. Like we did announcements through the office, but everything else, every story that came out, every picture that was taken from my phone. And it just got to be a lot. And I wanted to make sure that, if I'm traveling or if I can't be in a spot, that we had people taking care of that. And so we actually contracted with Social Schools for EDU, which is a Wisconsin-based company that does incredible things with social media. And we contracted with them to have our teachers send information to one person from their perspective, and then they send it out. So Andrea Gribble and Social Schools for EDU has been phenomenal to work with for us, which also gives me a chance to get, to have longer conversations with people about the work that we're doing, because I don't feel like I always have to get something out just to get it out.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people, I mean, even me in my position with trying to handle, 3 accounts in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram can be a lot. And I find myself spending more and more time creating content. So your advice, what is your advice? Do you pick one platform in particular? Do you try to handle all 3, or what do you do?
Yeah, some people have a different take on this, I think, and I don't know what the right answer is. The answer for me is that, I think we want to get really good at something that's going to give us the most leverage. And so we try to be really good on Facebook and really good on Twitter. And the Twitter thing is more because I feel the most comfortable with that. From a school perspective, we want to be really good on Facebook because 72% of adults online have a Facebook account. So if you have a message, or if you have a mode of communication that's going to reach 75%, nearly 75% of your users on a daily basis, then you're going to want to be in that world. And we tell stories differently in different capacities too. We know that the Facebook crowd is for our parents and our grandparents, and we know that the Twitter crowd is for our alumni and our new families, because 82% of millennials check their Twitter account on a daily basis. So if we know that, then we know that our new families coming in are going to be there, and then they know us before they get there. And it's also great for our alumni to connect. So when we do the Twitter stuff that we do is really more about the branding, logos, icons, and all of that stuff. And then the Instagram stuff is more about the stories about kids, because that's where our kids live. So there's different stories for different places. I would just tell you to get really good at one of them, like Facebook, just because that's where the vast majority of your parents are. And if you do that, then you're already, jumping into a group that is, it's like a ready-made group.
Right. Oh, that's absolutely true. And, I hear all the time that teachers bemoan the fact that no one reads their newsletters and anything anymore. So what?
That's on us, man. Matt, that's on us, honestly. And I'll tell them the same thing. Like, nobody reads. Of course they don't, because they're not in a place that they're getting to them right away. We can be upset with society that everything is 2 clicks away, and when it's not, we don't do it. You can be upset about that all you want. But the fact is that the world changes, and when the world changes, you got to change with it in some capacity. When I was a kid, my mom used to tell me, never get into the car of a stranger and never go to somebody's house when they're not home. Well, you know what? Last month, we took our family on vacation. We got into an Uber and we went to an Airbnb place. Right. That's what we did. That's who we are right now. So you just have to understand that's the situation that we're in. You don't have to love it, but you do have to acknowledge that it's real.
Yeah. And work with it and just adapt. Yeah. And so much is mobile anymore. I'm of that age, I guess, where I like my laptop and desktop, but you watch so many people, and my kids even, everything is done on their mobile device. And so if your story isn't available on their mobile device, I think you're missing a big piece.
Yeah, you have to be intentional about the time too. Like, we've been doing these 1 minute walk to work things that aren't going more than a minute and a half because that's the attention span. A minute or less is where you need to live. There's a reason that Instagram videos only go for a minute. That's not some number they took out of the air. They know what the attention span of people, is and what it looks like in those spaces. So, you have to cater to that, and you can be upset about catering to that, or you can realize that that's what it is, and you just want to live there and get the most momentum for what you're doing. You're gonna live in that space.
Do you take advantage of the stories on Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, we haven't. As a school, we haven't. But it's amazing that the reach that those get when you do, take part in that. The only issue for us is that, again, then it comes from one perspective. Now they've changed how they do it a little bit where you can add photos to it. And go from there. And that's changed the game a little bit for us. But if it was just, intent on you have to be in that space at that time, then it's only one user's perspective. But now we can add a lot to it through, just adding pictures from other people. So now we'll do more. We've done more of it in the last couple of weeks, month or so. And the reach has been fantastic with it.
Yeah, I was reading a social media article meant for entrepreneurs yesterday, and it was talking about one of the trends for 2019, and the IGTV is supposed to be huge. So one more thing to research, but maybe a tool that, will reach a whole lot of people, and maybe it's worth putting our energy into that.
Yeah, that's a really great conversation because I think, like you said, if you're looking at that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that social media, trend, then I think it's really good. At the same time, from a school trend, for us, less is more. And, IGTV with, the capacity to do 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, or more, it still doesn't resonate with what our audience needs. And that's what it comes down to, is what does your audience want? And our audience, and it might be different in a different school, but our audience wants quick information that makes them feel good and makes them feel connected. And for us, a minute or less is really a good spot for that.
Do you ever poll your families on, their devices or their preferred platforms, anything like that?
Yeah, we've actually done that the last 3 years, and we haven't done it yet this year. So we usually do it in the spring.
Okay. How about Facebook Live? Do you guys ever, record your events, your board meetings, anything like that?
Yeah, we do Facebook Live for every basketball game, and usually for concerts, as well as YouTube Live and Periscope on Instagram.
And is that done by staff there, or do you have students involved with that?
It depends. Either there's a couple of different, well, it just depends, because we usually have somebody doing a student usually does the basketball games right now. And then we have staff members that would do the concerts, depending. It just depends. More often than not, it's students.
Yeah, that's great too. So you can add their voice and maybe a little bit of their perspective as well.
But not, that we haven't gotten into yet. That it's just that they're doing the video piece of it. We don't have announcers or anything like that for our games at this point, and not that we haven't that we wouldn't allow it. It's just that they just haven't had the desire to do it. We don't have a lot of kids that want to be on that spot. It's just like when we've offered for years, we've offered our Twitter feed to students to tell them, like, you can take it over for the week. Like, we'll give you the access, we'll give you the account and the password, and you go ahead and do it. And then they don't want to do it. They said they'll do it from their account, but with the hashtag, but they want the attention to go to them, not somewhere else. And that's totally fine. You just got to live in that. That's okay.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, Joe, I know you got a lot going on your plate, and I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, anytime.
Can you just give people idea on how they can reach you, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. You can either you find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joe Joe _ Sanfelippo Sanfelippo, or you can go to jsanfelippo.com and get me there. And we just want to reach out and connect with people. And when you do that, then you're going to create more opportunities for the people around you. So the more connections we make, the better for everybody. And I tell people all the time, we're in this thing together. We got to figure out different ways that we can make sure that we're part of this thing together. And if you never give up the opportunity to say something great about your school, your kids, your community, you're going to find yourself in a much better spot.
Right. Go Crickets.
Go Crickets. I love it. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, and so a quick blurb for METC coming up.
Oh man, I can't. I am so cranked for METC. Like, it is a busy 3 days. So we're going to be talking about changing the narrative of schools. We're going to talk about leading where you are. We're going to be talking about, the creating a culture of yes. We're going to be talking about leading the learning. Man, we're going to talk about social media superheroes. We're going to do all of those things. And I am so pumped because it just seems like a great group of people to work with, and just connecting with more people and making it real for everybody is really important to us.
Well, definitely one of my favorite conferences, so I hope to run into you there for sure.
Yeah, we will for sure. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, and then at ICE, the Illinois Computing Educators, not to be confused with immigration or anything, but
right.
the ICE conference.
Yeah, I'll be there too, man.
I know.
Yeah, we're doing, and in ICE, we're bringing staff members. So we're doing my art teacher, or our art teacher Tasha Newton, has got this Instagram following that's just ridiculous. I mean, she is crushing it, right? Like, absolutely crushing it. And the work, and that's secondary, because the work that she does in classrooms is ridiculous too. She's fantastic, an amazing educator. And I love that she's getting that work out to the world. So we're going to actually do a story or a session together on telling a story and changing the narrative through social media platforms, Instagram in particular. And when you're looking to get better at, you just like find a Jedi to do it, and she is a Jedi. I can't wait to go there and talk about that.
Well, I have to go. Put that on my schedule.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That'll be Monday morning. She's going to be there Monday morning with us, and like I said, she's crushing it, and it's been fun. She's at I Art My Job, IART My Job, I Art My Job, and she's awesome.
I Art My Job. Okay. All right, Joe. Thank you very much, and I look forward to running into you at conferences and wherever life takes us.
Awesome. Thanks for the time, Matt. I appreciate everything that you do and getting the word out. So go Crickets.
Go Crickets. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Teacher's Classroom, which is part of the Area 5 Professional Development and Innovation Initiative. I'm your host, Matthew Weld. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your colleagues who also will find it interesting. You can follow Teach Illinois on Twitter at TeachILPD, and I can be found at Matthew Weld. You can find and subscribe to the Teacher's Classroom on pretty much wherever you find your podcasts, and we welcome any subscribers and comments, feedback. If there's a particular topic that you would like to hear about on Teach Illinois, please message me, and I'll see what I can do about getting an expert in the field on that. We also invite you to check out the online course offerings on teachillinois.com. We have an ever-expanding repertoire, catalog of options that are available for professional development and teachers. Please check us out, and thank you for listening.